as I'm talking with the two of you, titles. So, I mean, I know we have a PhD, we have an LMFT, and maybe a little bit of insider baseball. A lot of therapists listen to the virtual couch. So, Rebecca, do you make Julie call you doctor?
At the beginning I did, when we first met. Yeah, but now it's just first name only.
Okay, all right. So, I don't know. Are you okay if I just, Rebecca and Julie? Is that okay? All right. Okay. And on that note, I mean, I do feel, and that's the part where a lot of people just assume, Julie, that you and I are, I mean, basically we can prescribe medication. I mean, that's what we get, right? Is an LMFT, you know? Yeah. But for those listening that aren't familiar with, Julie and I, licensed marriage and family therapists, Rebecca, PhD. So is it clinical psychology?
That's right.
Okay. But I will note, and I know I just told you guys, I'll go over your bios and the intro, and I will have already said amazing, glowing things about you. But you know, a lot of I love the fact that the two of you collaborate together, because I think a lot of therapists, we feel a little bit insecure, inadequate, you know, around our PhD colleagues. So tell me, how did you guys meet? How did you collaborate? Tell me that story.
Oh, great. I love that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, Rebecca was teaching in my graduate program. She was teaching systemic treatment of substance abuse.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So that's how we originally met. She was my professor. And I think we connected at that time. And then after I finished graduate school, I went on to do an internship with Rebecca as my supervisor.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. BA. So it was during that internship and working closely together clinically that we ended up discussing the book, which had been Rebecca's idea, the first book, the Mindfulness Workbook for Addiction.
Yeah. And what year was that? The Mindfulness Workbook for Addiction?
Yeah, they came out in 2012. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Rebecca, put you on the spot here. Was Julie the shining star in the class? Was, you know, right?
Here, I have to say something.
That's right.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, Julie really stood out, and I taught that class for 5 years, and she was really the top 1% of the students that I worked with, and I saw that right away. And when she came to work at the VA hospital, clearly she just continued to improve her skills, improve her ability to interact with the staff, and just I saw a beautiful progression of a clinician. And I definitely wanted to work with that person.
I love it. And Rebecca, when did you start having the idea of the book, the first book, the Mindfulness Workbook?
Yes, the Mindfulness Workbook for Addiction, I had in my mind for about 15 years prior to writing it.
Wow, okay.
Maybe that's how you are sometimes. You have an idea and it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Most people are like that. They have great ideas, but not going anywhere. But I really, we originally were thinking about what was missing in the literature. And one of the things missing in the literature originally that we were talking about was the fact that a lot of people who are either in addiction or in recovery have a lot of losses. Okay. And I couldn't find anything in the literature that really spoke specifically to how to handle loss, how to be well when you're talking about loss in addiction and in recovery. So Julie and I started collaborating, talking about, you know, our clients, what were we noticing? And a lot of them were grieving, either grieving the loss of their addiction, of course, or they were grieving other loss of friends, family members, and even their youth, their childhood, if they had a trauma in early childhood. So we talked more and unpackaged this idea, and we presented it to New Harbinger together. Okay. And New Harbinger loved it, but they wanted us to really add in a beautiful mindfulness component, which we ended up loving also. And we incorporated mindfulness, addiction recovery, and handling loss.
Okay, so that's I was going to ask you, Rebecca, have you always been a mindfulness practitioner, or was that something that kind of came into your practice later?
That's such a good question. It's one of those scary questions because I have been a yoga practitioner for 35 years.
Okay.
I started doing yoga in college, and I started teaching yoga. I was a private exercise trainer in New York City for a number of years, and I always had a wellness piece to me, but psychology was calling all the time. So I ended up putting the yoga and the mindfulness aside, getting a PhD, which of course is mind-blowing, but not very mindful. And, you know, then eventually came back to meditation and mindfulness, realizing to be in this profession, you probably know, you have to super duper take care of yourself. And to me, I use mindfulness to take care of myself. And I also noticed that clients really do start feeling better once we integrate mindfulness. So it was a win-win.
Well, and I feel like I really came to it about 5 or 6 years ago, and now I feel, how did I do therapy without it? And so I like that story. I assumed that, you had been to Tibet, you had done all of these things in your youth. So I love hearing that, even though you had that yoga practice, you came to mindfulness maybe as a practice later.
Exactly.
Okay. Julie, were you a mindfulness person and before you started down your path to becoming a therapist?
I think of myself more as mindless. Yeah, no, really. I mean, when I think about myself with mindfulness, I always have to have a chuckle because I'm so prone, like many of my clients, so I get it. I'm so prone to future thinking.
Yeah.
Everything kind of planned out, the next, and really like way, way far into the future. So I can certainly find whatever scary possibility might be lurking there somewhere. I'm going to prepare for it. So that's kind of how my mind tends to work. So, but yes, it is something that has become important to me, obviously, to contrast what's a very naturally anxious mind for me.
Let me, if you guys don't mind too, I want to get your, do you just have a kind of a general definition of what that looks like? And then I want to jump a little bit ahead to, or after that, talk about, because I feel like people do here. Now I apologize. My thought just went at 1,000 miles an hour, but talking about mindfulness now, I know there are people that are like, oh, okay, the mindfulness thing, right? When are they going to talk about a ponytail and a robe and a mat? So, I mean, before we get to that, it's not that. What is mindfulness? So for the person listening right now that feels like they've heard it a lot, but they really don't know what it means. Can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our basic definition that we use in our books, and I think for ourselves, is an awareness of the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
Right? So it's staying in the present, it's being in the now, as people tend to connect with. But it's also the sense of like welcoming and non-judgmentalism with the experience. So that emotions that arise and experiences that arise, we can kind of sit with those and observe them, and we don't have to love them, but we can be okay, and we can kind of invite whatever life brings and kind of move with it. Is that
perfectly said? Yeah.
Okay, because I'm sure you guys run into this all the time, but so at first, when you first lay that out to a client, though, how do they respond?
It's a good question. It really depends on the client. Some people have been taking some yoga or, and they can really grab hold of like, yes, when I'm in the moment, like that's what I want more of. I want to be present. I have some clients that really grab hold of that. And I think for others, it's, what does that really mean? And what are you talking about? I need to plan. I'm busy.
Yeah, that's what I see a lot, right? It's like I've had people tell me, okay, but that means I'm not dealing with things, And, I don't know if I can throw a unscientific study out. That's what, Rebecca, this might be hard on your ear. Right?
I can handle it.
But I feel like when I've just got this 25% of clients that come in almost just when I try to just get passionate about mindfulness are just in one ear out the other. I must not understand if I'm really just telling them that this is what they need to do. I feel like I get about 50% that really do love the idea. They know that could be beneficial. They do a little bit of it. And so then they'll come in and tell me, and I did the breathing thing and it was kind of cool, but then it didn't work, And I feel like I get about 25% that then within, by the time they're done, are coming in and they're saying to me, Tony, it's really not about, and they've gone all zen on me. So, that's my unscientific. What do you guys see? Do you see similar or what do you see?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's also been my experience. Yeah. And, you mentioned clients saying it's not working too. And that's something that in my process as a therapist, I've had to really help people and coach people on practicing before they need it. Right?
Yes.
You can't take a deep breath when you're at a 10. Like it's not going to do much. Yeah. Right? You're going to write off that coping skills. It's really, I think of it a lot like anger management. I tell my clients, like, I wouldn't tell you like, you're about to hit someone, count to 10. Right? That's not when we do it. We notice what's happening in the body, a little tension starting to build, and then we try it out and see what happens. And I like to tell clients too, like, if you were at a 6, the situation could bump you to a 10 pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So like in the morning, we're going to bring you down. So you're starting at like a 0 or a 1 or a 2, and then maybe you get bumped to a 6, but you can still use your, coping skills at that point.
Okay, this has to go on YouTube now, because when you were saying that, both of you you've moved your body, you got it's like you're letting go of everything. It was so fun to watch.
That's exactly when we were writing the book, and Julie and I would would send a chapter back and forth. We have 52 chapters, so there's a lot of back and forth and editing and reviewing. Whenever I read one of Julie's chapters, I just instantly calmed down. Just reading a couple of pages of what she was writing, I just felt so good. I felt so relaxed. Then I was able to write and reflect. So just, reading a little bit about it and even reading an affirmation, even one affirmation kind of gets the shoulders a little more relaxed. You're not so invested in the outcome of something. So that's been our experience in both books, but certainly this gift of recovery, it's been amazing. And hopefully we want to make sure that the reader can actually feel their shoulders loosening up and breathing, releasing any tension.
Well, and I love Julie said that it's so difficult, I think, at times to try to convince someone when the waters are calm to do the work, right? But and I feel like then when they come in and, okay, you're right, I wasn't doing the stuff, or when you work with someone who maybe has relapsed, and here comes the shame and the guilt, and then I know I wasn't doing the work, and see how bad I am. But I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, what do you do when you get those kind of clients? What do you say?
Yeah, for me, it's about like right there in the session when you just said it to me, I know I would be taking a really slow, deep breath with them, right? Because they mirror that too. Like we're doing it together. Like, ooh, I'm feeling that shame like deep in my chest right now. Like you're carrying this weight, and just kind of sitting with them in that and experiencing it together, I think is the first thing that I do. And then in terms of what I would be talking about, when it comes to mindfulness, I love to think small. Like it doesn't have to mean you have a meditation room and you're going to yoga every single day and you're, this is your whole devotion now. It can be a lot smaller or simpler than that. Like for me, it has a lot to do with the five senses. That's what I connect to the most in my own practice. So something like when I'm cooking, like chopping and noticing the sensation of chopping the vegetables, or washing my hands and feeling the water, and just for a moment, just being there. And it's small and it helps, right? So let's not build it up so it has to be all or nothing, because we know all or nothing is a favorite of clients, right? And all of us.
No, that's great. And I like what you're saying, because when they are bringing that into the room, and then all of a sudden you are able to kind of say, you bet, we're feeling it, aren't we? Right. This is, but, and then the just being uber present. And I love that. There's a couple of therapists here that went to a training where I guess I heard they took about 20 minutes to eat a blueberry, but it was the most amazing blueberry of their lives. Right.
Yes. So mindful eating is something that I really gravitate towards, because I think eating itself is one of the most mindless things that we do. So you invite clients in session to, usually it's something like a raisin or a small cracker or something, and to break it down into some steps and really experience it mindfully and just see what that's like. That's a great exercise.
Okay, let's talk about the book. So The Gift of Recovery, I have it right here. 52 Mindful Ways to Live Joyfully Beyond Addiction. I think this shows the truth. It is bent. That means it has been written. And I have people send me books, and I'm grateful for that. But yours, I devoured. I mean, as a matter of fact, I noticed I was feeling anxious that I wanted to get to the next chapter. So then I was very aware of that, breathed through it, stayed very present. So what motivated you to write this book then? We talked about how Rebecca had this 15-year plan. I missed an opportunity for a joke of when, Julie was just a young child, again, if you see the YouTube video, right? So what led to the second book?
Well, the publishers actually came back to us. They said the first book, Mindfulness for Addiction, was really doing well. It was getting great reviews. People were really loving it. And the publisher actually asked us to write a kind of a pocket guide, a follow-up that was smaller, more accessible, and more in a gift format, so that it can be given out in recovery centers for the holidays.
Nice.
And so we love that idea. However, life is busy. So we really had to reflect whether we had the time and the energy to write the second book.
To do it right.
To do it right. To do it the way we wanted to do it, that it gravitates to people who really get it. So it took a bit of thinking and communication.
But I think when that arose, it was a strange time for me. I just had my second baby. So I had like a 2-year-old and a little baby at home. And, you know, the cognitive part of me is going like, this is nuts. You know what a commitment this is. You've done this before. Right. And then, you know, not to sound hooey, but like the energetic part of me, the emotional part of me, just the spiritual part of me was just going like, yeah, this is it. Like to sit and collaborate with Rebecca again. And in that kind of fragile time for me of a little chaos at home with the 2 small children, to be, you know, each day sitting down and thinking about coping and writing about coping. It was exactly just a wonderful, wonderful thing for me to do. So it really was a bright spot, and I think really helpful for me during that first year of my second child's life.
That. So it was the writing the book itself became therapeutic. I mean, and mindfulness activity. That's brilliant. I mean, and I feel like I'm going to sound cheesy now saying, okay, knowing that it really does. I feel like it comes through. I mean, I feel like the book's incredibly genuine, and it's just so strength-based and uplifting, and which is, man, what we need to help in addiction. I want to say real quick too, when you talk about addiction, I feel like most people do assume that it has to be some heavy, you know, drug or alcohol or sex addiction but these concepts work with what?
Everything.
Right?
Yeah, it's about living, like, you know, Rebecca was talking earlier about wellness and how important it is for her to always be well in her work, you know, so that transmits in the sessions. And that's something that she has always taught me and was so critical for me to learn, that like self-care is so important so we can be our best selves, whatever our job is, therapist or otherwise. And so I do think what's in the book is really about being well and living a joyful and kind of free, peaceful kind of life. So yeah, I think that most people want that kind of thing.
Exactly. And, you know, I just finished reading Deepak Chopra's new book called The Healing Self. And he has one quote in there that I love. You're either busy healing or you're busy celebrating. And I was, at the time I was thinking, you know, when we were beginning to write this book, I was like, I'm about busy healing right now. So that book helped me heal, our book, and each day, each week, it took about a year or more to write.
Okay. Yeah.
It takes some time. But you know, I used it as a healing year. And it was helpful to think about writing in that way.
Okay. So I love it. I mean, I think that, the self-care. So I feel like whether it is someone who even wants to just improve a bit on their eating habits or spending or any of those things, that those concepts all kind of just give you that little pause before the acting on the impulse, right?
Yes, absolutely.
No, I like it. Can I ask you a couple of questions? I want to get to some of the stuff in the book. So I think one of you had mentioned, I think Rebecca, when you were talking about working in the field of addiction, I think a lot of people do assume that it's just extremely heavy. What do you enjoy the most about it, or kind of what kind of keeps you going in the field?
That's a super question, Tony, because I've been in the field 20 years now, and I've been reflecting on this myself, the idea of longevity and the idea of what does it take to be a mental health provider for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What? So, you know, and a lot of the people that I see are just starting and don't realize that you need wellness through the entire career. So, working with addiction to me, I think the successes are huge. Even day-to-day successes that the clients come back and tell me about are pretty special. And I can feel their joy in finding a life without addiction and finding fun and excitement and connection and attachment without drugs or alcohol or whatever the behavior is. So to me, it's worth it just to see that. And then it goes up from there. So that's
absolutely.
Same, Julie?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I absolutely love working in addiction because I get to see the process of change maybe even more rapidly than with other situations. When people do, become abstinent, get clean and sober, make change, whatever that looks like for them, it is profound. It's just so profound. And, watching people's eyes light up and the skin becomes clearer and they feel just more confident in their bodies, and they're reporting these like really surprised, right? Like, and then, I had, dinner with my husband, and just having dinner with my husband was fun without wine. And it's just, the excitement, like I can feel it right now. I just love witnessing that and getting to be kind of a little part of that journey. Is just really, really fun for me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. What do you feel like when you do have the clients that get some success and then there might be relapse? I mean, do you see that as difficult? Do you see that as part of the process? Do you see that as teaching moments? What is that like?
I think I would say all of the above, like everything you just said. Absolutely. I think it's difficult. It's hard for me still to watch my clients suffer. It's, it's just me. I feel it with them. I wish that it was smooth all the time. And yet at the same time, it's absolutely a teaching moment. And it's wonderful for a relapse to happen in treatment because they get to bring it back and we get to look at it together. And I get to bring that compassion and hopefully help them internalize some self-compassion there and keep moving forward. So that's a wonderful thing. And of course, it can be disheartening and can be a little scary, right? Like, will it stop here or where's this going? Let's, our guard's up a little bit now. And so it's that definitely all unfolds in the room, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I really work with the clients on what do you want? Like, I ask myself that too sometimes. What do I want? And so it's just a goal-oriented approach, a positive approach to what's going to be happening next for clients and for our therapeutic relationship, for trust, for 90% of people relapse according to the research. Is it 80 to 90%, something like that? So I think it's part of the work. I Tai Chi it. I don't, I don't fight it. I'm not, fighting a relapse. I'm just assuming that for some of my clients, for a majority of the clients, there's a chance that a relapse could happen. So we talk about it beforehand. I can see a client being pre-relapse. I said, it looks like you're in relapse, even though they haven't had a drink or used drugs on the behavior yet. I can feel it. I'm sure they can feel it too. And we talk about it before it happens. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I like, I like how you're just, I'm grateful that you put out that statistic. Cause I do even, I'm noticing in my own brain that struggle of when a client is saying, if I don't want to ever relapse again and not wanting to kind of just say, hey, look, you're probably gonna, because I know we go with that struggle of where, we don't want to be handing them this license. Right. But then also wanting them to know that, like, I love what you said. That's just, I'm still here. That's part of the process. We're going to work with it. Sometimes, I'll say, they'll say, I'm sure you're disappointed. And I say, no, I'm glad that we can work on this together. Right. Yeah. But I like
so much courage to bring it to the room. It really
that's what I was going to say. I like Rebecca, when you're saying, I haven't really thought of that. The like they are relapsing yet they're not. Because you're right. We notice. And I feel like when we were talking earlier about how it's hard to get people to do the work when the waters are calm. Right. So when you start to see them say, I think I'm good. I don't think I need the mindfulness practice every day, or, I've been too busy to exercise or whatever. Is that kind of what you're talking about where you start to see, okay. I love that. Yeah.
It shows up in a lot of ways. And I'm sure you've heard this, but they say that relapse is a process, not an event, right?
Yeah.
So it's an event relapse. It's the process of relapse. So I think, it shows up in a lot of ways. It shows up in not going to meetings or not connecting with other sober people or not exercising or not meditating, whatever it is for them. And then you notice just these little choices, these choice points, right? Where it used to be, we come to a crossroads, and when we're really committed to recovery, it's the recovery choice. Like, okay, I'm going to decide to call my sponsor, or I'm going to decide to skip that event because I feel a little weird. And suddenly it's I talked to my ex-boyfriend. We used to use together, but I don't think he's using anymore. Where you just, as a therapist, your gut goes,
Yeah. And maybe that's a good way to jump into, I'll just really quick right out of the beginning. You start out talking about the noise in your head. And I love that we normalize that. A lot of people feel like that's unique to them, or all the feelings and that accompany recovery. And then I do want to know, I'm really curious, when you collaborate on a book, whose quote is, just like a garden that needs to have sunshine, food, and water on a regular basis, your recovery will need to grow, or will grow and thrive when you begin to nourish it with a steady supply of mindfulness. Whose quote?
I don't know. I'll take credit for that one.
I love it.
I think Julie, but yeah.
I was like, okay, I thought one of you would be like, I think it was me, even though you're like, it was me, right? Okay.
It's merged so intensely.
The collaboration is real. It's all in there. Yeah.
That's really, I love that. That's the no, but I love that one. All right. So are you okay if I want to know some of the chapters stick out to you. I've written down some notes on things that I love. Where do we go next? Can I go? Okay, cool. All right. So there's a few. The human brain, you talk about the built-in reward system or the reward pathway. So, I love how, can you just kind of explain that in layman's terms? What is that?
Sure. Okay. So I'll try to stick to layman's terms. But yeah, it's the dopamine that goes off in the brain, right? So it is a reward system. So the brain is set up from an evolutionary standpoint to reward us when we do something that helps us survive or helps the species survive. So that includes exploring our environment. We get a little dopamine hit that feels good, right? Sex, obviously, food, dopamine hits, right? All of those. So the way this applies to addiction is that certain substances and certain behaviors really hijack that natural system and shoot the dopamine through the roof, right? So it's extremely rewarding, and it is training our brain to get more, to get more, to get more. And it kind of goes from there. And unfortunately, it's not just constant rewards at that point, that while we're using these substances, it's kind of burning out the dopamine. So it's not as pleasurable as it used to be. So you hear people talk about the first high, they're chasing the first high, because the brain really can't experience that pleasure the way that it did. So it is really, when you think about it, when I talk to clients about this, like, it really messes with you, right? Like the substance is telling you to have more and more, but it's not going to feel as good. And you just have to keep trying, and the tolerance goes up. So that's the picture of that. Yeah.
Which then makes sense is when we get back to the concept of mindfulness, that we have to learn how to live with those feelings, because it's natural or normal. Your brain's just thinking it's doing what it's supposed to. Give me more, right?
Yes. Yeah. To sit with and tolerate those urges. Absolutely.
So in chapter 4, it's mastering the breath. And I feel like that's one of those where, again, those who aren't, they view mindfulness as this thing that, they don't understand. But boy, the breath really is key. I don't know. Do one of you want to address that, or what are your thoughts on what do you tell somebody that how important the breath is going to be, other than the fact that it keeps us alive, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and I know that I wrote a lot about that in the book, actually, because when I think about the fact that the breath is keeping us alive, and it's not something I have to like make myself do all day, it's just happening. I really like that kind of shift in thinking, is that this is so powerful. It's something that, it might be a little dark, but I think about, being underwater, and if you swim a little too far and you come up, right, in that gasp, like how much the breath, like we hold on to that, and how much we need it and want it, and how sustaining the breath is. And yet it's just happening outside of my awareness. Like I'm just being supported in that way, is how I think about it. Like, wow, I don't have to try hard or convince somebody to let me breathe. Like it's happening naturally. So that I think of as kind of like a gift. But the fact that it's happening outside of awareness is something that we do try to focus in the book, and help people combat a little bit, because it is so powerful if we can just bring our awareness to the breath and really pay attention to the breath, and then even kind of use the breath, right? We can actually focus in, and we can lengthen the breath. We can deepen the breath. We can, really use it to benefit us to the utmost. And it's pretty simple, and it's always accessible to us, and we can do it with one breath, or we can do it for 5 minutes or more. It's really a great doorway to mindfulness, I think.
Yeah. So do you feel like, and I think this is the thing where those of us who practice the mindfulness, or, when I have a client just say, and I tried the deep breathing thing, I feel like I hear that often, but what do you say to that? Or how do you get someone out of that? I know I'm just supposed to take a couple of deep breaths. I mean, how do you tap into, that kind of a new, and maybe help them with this epiphany of, we're not just talking about,
Right. Well, for some of those people, not everybody, but for some of those people, the gateway for me has been going cognitive a little bit.
Okay.
If it sounds silly, or it sounds simple, really talking about the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, and what's happening to the body when you're feeling stressed and fight or flight. And the fact that like you can actually take control and kick in that parasympathetic nervous system and bring yourself back down again. And here's how you do it. It's somehow, for some people, that really helps it click a little bit more.
I love it. Yeah. So that actually controlling the breath can help lower cortisol levels and release these other, you can literally take control of your fight or flight response, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. No, I love that. Chapter 8, anger. You have a Zen proverb that is wonderful. Let go or be dragged. And I'm going to force one thing in, and I want to hear you guys talk about it, because I think anger is, just is at the core of so much of I know this feeling unlovable or feeling out of control, or these things that people turn to addiction. There's a TED Talk. I did a podcast on acceptance and commitment therapy where the speaker just said the easiest way to stop playing tug of war with the monster in our brains is to let go of the rope. And I don't know, I never really thought of it that way. So I love that proverb. And so, yeah. And then your chapter 8 was amazing. So what do you, who wants to take on that one? The anger. How do you guys work with anger?
I'm giving this one to Rebecca because she always says that she loves anger as an emotion.
Let's talk about
my favorite. You tapped into my favorite feeling.
Okay.
I agree. Let go or be dragged. I found this proverb and it just hit me and as awesome. And so I use it in my own life. I just try to literally take something in my hand, anger, frustration, irritation, and I just turn my hand over.
Okay.
And I go, oh my gosh, it's on the ground. So anger is something that I think for some reason this time in our lives, everyone is irritated and angry about something pretty much every week, not just therapy, but in everything. So I don't fight it. I acknowledge it. I bring it into the room. I bring it in and I kind of observe it. I take a look at it. As Julie said, I kind of want to get the texture of it, the color of it. I kind of want to be like someone who's just kind of tapping into it and respecting, in my opinion, because I grew up in a rough part of town in the Bronx, New York. I definitely have residual anger, I think. And so I definitely have to really keep myself in check and figure out, is this a reaction that matches the situation?
Okay.
And so for me, that's why I love it, because I'm constantly bringing it in to myself, understanding it, figuring it out, and not being mad at anger. I mean, that sounds odd, but I actually enjoy it. And I like to look at it from a distance and check it out. So.
Okay. Is that the time when someone can enjoy it, is when they kind of stop and then they have that awareness around? I like what you're saying. What does it look like? The texture, the color? I mean, just really, because then it's just like what is external thing. Which I guess is why I like that you can then get it in your hand and get rid of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of our meditations in the book, actually, I think are externalizing emotions in order to observe them. Like that's, I know we have one called Liquid Mood, where you're asked to kind of like pour the mood out and like play with it, almost like silly putty kind of thing, and experience it in that way. And I think one thing that's Rebecca's so strong in clinically is her willingness to sit with anger. Because I know for a lot of us, including myself, sometimes anger in the room is like, ooh, this is the one I better soothe quickly.
Right.
Or, what time is the session over? And to be able to really sit with it, I think, again, the client can mirror that. Like, this is also one of my many emotions. It is also safe for me to explore it. I don't have to react against it. I can be with that, and it's not going to destroy my relationships. It's not going to destroy my whole world. Because I don't think it's the anger itself. It's our reactions to our emotions, right, that can cause damage. Anger can be really fabulous and healthy. Like, we talk about this in the book, but anger is in a lot of ways an awareness of our own boundaries. Like, I'm angry because my boundary got crossed. Like, now I know I have a boundary there, right? Okay, so I'm learning about myself, I'm learning about my relationships, and now I can make choices, not be driven into chaos, but I can make some real choices about how I want to move through the world, because I got this little alert system called a feeling, and if I'm willing to look at it, then I can use it.
That's nice. That is.
Nice. And I think that people are doing angry emails and angry texts, and that's more and more, right? I don't know if you're hearing this in your practice.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, they'll give you the phone and say, look what I sent out. It's like, ooh, slow down.
Yes.
But I just try to help folks wait. I mean, in other words, anger is temporary, just like every other emotion, and now that's a teaching moment, and that's cool. But with these texts and these emails, I just say, if you need to write it, hold it, send it to yourself, and let's talk. Just give it a day, 24 hours, let it breathe. And let it, like we said, let it release itself. And usually in 24 hours, folks can actually take another look at their text or their email, which people don't want to wait that long, but it does help. Yeah. And they can say, I didn't send it. I thought about it. And if everyone did that with angry texts and emails, we would be such a little smoother little planet, you know.
Yes.
Than we
So,
are.
okay, you have to, if it's okay, 2 of Tony's ADD moments, and I just did third person, I'm aware. But the first one is that I love when you said, see this text. I love when I have clients that are, and then I said, and she said, and I said, and they're like, well, wait a minute, I'm not sure what I said there. And then they pull out their phone, and I'm like, oh, it was all over text, right?
All of it.
Yes.
Right.
Or they'll be telling you, and so then I said this, and you go, wait, what is this?
Oh, I know, this is happening all the time. And then I always want to, and I was like, really? Like the hot thumbs, or, okay. You guys see that too. The other part of that is, I honestly I wasted 30 minutes on the App Store one day trying to find I was like, there's got to be an app where it's going to not text for 12 hours, or you can set it or whatever. And I did find some like drunk dial apps or whatever, but they just didn't quite work the way I did. So I don't know, maybe we need to create an app, right?
That's genius.
The therapist anger, whatever, recovery app, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Trademark, the 3 of us right there. Down in the world. I'm so glad that Rebecca, I'm so glad that you enjoy anger, because that was nice, right? That helped. I think that helped that whole conversation. I love that. I won't keep you much longer. The chapter 12, when emotions get stuck, are we subconsciously trying to, I was telling you my notes. Chapter 12 is about when emotions get stuck. And so I want to, tell me more about that, Julie and Rebecca, where that comes from, that chapter.
Yeah. So that one was actually yours.
Yeah, really?
True, yeah.
Nice.
And I think originally it was really focused on PTSD and trauma.
Ah, okay.
And then it, got opened up a little bit more so that even more of our readers could resonate, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress part is when, we both worked at the VA hospital.
Oh, yeah.
In San Diego. So we have seen a lot of these emotions getting stuck, not just for veterans and military people, but for all of us. My experience of when emotions get stuck is that there's an antidote for that. Mm-hmm. There's a cure for that. And the cure is awesome. It's called self-compassion. And to me, feelings get stuck. It's normal. It's natural. They get stuck in the body. They get stuck in the mind. They get stuck in relationships with another person. However, along with the mindfulness and the taking a deep breath, is to understand that there is a cure, and being compassionate for yourself in the experience of being stuck is, to me, what we work on in therapy, and also personally.
Okay. And what does that mean? Like, I feel like the 3 of us, we're going to know what that means, but self-compassion when someone's stuck, what would that look like, I guess, for someone?
Yeah. The way I think of self-compassion that clients can often connect with is, what would you tell your best friend?
Ah, okay.
Situation,
yes.
Because
that's good.
Yeah, we don't often treat ourselves that way, right?
Right.
We're berating ourselves. Mm-hmm. Whereas for someone that we loved and someone we were caring for, we would offer them so much compassion, kindness, like, wow, that sounds really hard what you're going through. I can see how you reacted that way.
Yeah.
Maybe not how you wanted to react, but I get it.
Mm-hmm.
That talking to yourself that way, that is self-compassion, and it's powerful.
That's good.
Yeah. And there may be other ways to walk around the stuck feeling. For example, in our book, we talk about a person who couldn't go to the grocery store because he was so agitated, or it reminded him of something that was traumatic. Yeah. So a friend hearing this would say, maybe you want to go a little bit later in the evening, or maybe when everybody's gone, you want to go at 11 o'clock. It's okay. It's okay. So it's the idea of giving yourself permission to do, circle around behaviors if you're feeling stuck in a certain way.
And what just came to my mind, I love that example of, because I feel like sometimes if you were looking at with a friend who said that, you would say, or you know what, hey, I'll go with you. I'll be there with you. And I feel like if we're beating ourselves up, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. So I wouldn't ask for help. Right. But that's good. Okay. Okay. 33. This is a hot one for me. Relationships that don't work, and especially coming from a place of addiction. And I love how you guys laid out earlier that, kind of where addiction comes from and what it's about. And so we have all of these feelings, and whether our dopamine systems have been hijacked and we just want to feel better and all these sort of things. And we're going to therapy and we're doing mindfulness. But what does that look like if we're in a relationship that is not healthy or toxic or?
Yeah. it looks hard. Yeah, it's what it looks like. That is, for me, one of the biggest challenges clinically, because I can have a client I'm working with individually who is really wanting better health and wanting wellness and moving towards that, and then going back into a home environment or a toxic relationship that is really sabotaging the progress, and they kind of know it, but as we all know, attachment is huge, and exiting relationships is not easy, and sticking up for ourselves in relationships, changing relationship dynamics is not easy. So this, again, I mean, I know we're on this self-compassion piece right now, but I do think that's huge too, is compassion for that whole experience. Like for me, bringing compassion to how challenging that is. Be in a difficult relationship, because sometimes the friends are saying like, you should just break up with them, or you should just leave your marriage, or this, you know, and then they're sitting with like the guilt and the shame around, if I was stronger, like let's just make the fact that this is incredibly hard, and here's where your stuck place is, and let's acknowledge that, and then we can look at it and sit with it in this honest way. So that's kind of an opening.
Do you guys find that, I mean, do you find that when people do get, you know, healthy, or when they really get beyond, I mean, like right in the 52 mindful ways to live joyfully beyond addiction, that sometimes when people get beyond addiction, that then they do realize that that this isn't the person that got in the relationship, the toxic relationship, and they are going to feel different. Maybe they do feel more empowered, or maybe, you know, now this new them goes home and here's, oh, you think you're, you know, special, right? And it's just, do you run into that often?
Yes, I find that getting sober or changing an addictive behavior is one of the most empowering experiences, right? Because like if you can take charge of that, if you can day by day like ride out a craving, ride out an urge, that you're learning so much about how strong you are. And I'm certainly mirroring that back to clients, right? Figuring out who you are and what's important to you is such a big process of recovery, that I think people do then have a lot more strength to make different choices in their relationships, to realize that they can be alone, or they might even find another partner who feels healthier for them. So it does open up a world of choice. I think a lot of the process of therapy is sitting with all the feelings that come up around choice, you know, and what's that like to suddenly have choices, and now I can envision a whole bunch of different futures, and maybe that makes me a little anxious sometimes, or you know, because the devil you know versus the devil you don't, as they say. So that's a whole part of the process too.
Exactly. I like what we wrote on page 145, this one question: is this relationship supporting my vision of myself? I just, sometimes it just takes one question to shift the equation. And I think that's a pretty powerful question. Is this relationship supporting my vision of myself? And it takes some quiet time to answer that question. You can't be, you know, running around and trying to figure that one out. You actually have to slow down, give yourself the respect to answer the question, write down the answer to the question, and sit with it for a bit. And there will be some changes.
Well, I like, and that's when you said maybe at that point you need to go talk to a relationship counselor.
Exactly.
And I do a lot of couples work, and I work from a EFT, emotionally focused therapy place, and you know, and that's where, being really candid, it's, you know, you're trying to get somebody to be vulnerable, right? And it's a framework where the responses of fixing and judgment aren't welcome in that dojo, right? I mean, so, and I feel like sometimes that EFT framework even exposes is a dramatic word, but it, you know, this new person who, this is how I feel, and if the other person isn't able to kind of have empathy for that and understand, that will expose that at times.
It will. Absolutely. And I just want to throw out there, because I think it's important for any clients that might be listening, is the Mindfulness Workbook has a very significant, I think the longest chapter in that book of 10 chapters is on relationships.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the critical exercises in there is kind of a checklist about like, here's what healthy relationships look like. Here's what, you know, questionable relationships look like. And here's the very unhealthy, unsafe relationships. So people can actually look at that and kind of go, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that, and take a time to, you know, to work with the information privately with the workbook. And I do think that can be helpful.
Okay. I'm so grateful you asked, because I do feel like even when we're doing couples therapy, we're trying to sell this healthy relationship that sometimes it's hard to kind of step back and say, oh, if they've never seen that, or it wasn't modeled, or then I'm trying to tell them, you know, and then there's a unicorn and you get on its back and you ride to this place of gold, because I feel like they're just like, yeah, that's not happening, So I like that, the checklist of, that's good. I mean, I feel like that was a dumb statement. That's good, you guys, that you wrote a book. Well done.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll have links to that in the show notes too then. That's awesome. Hey, so before I let you go, any chapters that you in particular that we didn't cover that are just something that you're really passionate about or that you love?
Yeah. For me, I can't remember the name of the chapter, but there is a chapter specifically on basically embracing emotions. Getting comfortable with moods.
Yeah.
Okay. For feelings. There's a couple of chapters in there. So yeah, for me, it's been such a process and a journey for myself to really accept all the feelings, not just the fun ones, right? And to realize that they have a purpose. So they're not something that needs to get numbed out or gotten rid of, but really that I can look at something like fear or anger or embarrassment or any of those ones that don't feel so great necessarily, and see that they are a guidepost for me to learn about myself, to learn about to make choices. So that's been really nice for me, and I really like that that's in the book, because I think a lot of my addicted clients, right, they are not comfortable with feelings. They have not felt feelings in a while. The feelings were always a trigger to go and use. So to really get comfortable with all the different feelings and be able to name them and be willing to sit with them and not be so scared of them, I think is really one of my favorite things. Yeah.
Okay. And Rebecca, what comes to mind?
Yes, I'm really into Playful Recovery, which is chapter 50.
Okay.
I find that folks get so serious in recovery, and so they kind of white knuckle at the beginning, and most people forget how to be joyful and play. So Julie really put this one together so nicely, and I really, really kind of, and more and more as I'm seeing more people, I'm gravitating more to just lightening it up.
Oh yeah.
Right, and having more fun, having it be cool, and less intense.
I love that, and here's my truth: is I loved the book. I didn't get to. I think I ended up getting about 30 something chapters in, and that I love even when Julie was we were kind of communicating about the interview. It was even, hey, let's make sure that the two of you are together because you really play off each other well, and I feel like that's what I love about doing a podcast, is that we can interact and we can have fun and we can laugh. And because I feel like I'm sure you guys see this when you get new clients sometimes, and I'll say, if they're rookies, what was that like? And usually I thought it was going to be a lot more stuffy, or I thought it was going to be a lot more, and that's not, I don't know, that's not as productive as I think it can be.
No, it's not really what works. It's not really what works. Like, human connection has a lot of playfulness, and it's more authentic, right? And it's so great for us to model that for clients too, that we can be a little playful. We can laugh, right? If you make a joke, I can laugh. It's great.
I have to tell you, I had a client in this morning, and I moved in my chair and kind of made a little bit of a fart sound. And I became so aware that I wonder if they think that I really just did that in the session. So then I found that I'm like, I can repeat that sound, and so then I tried and I couldn't. And then I was like, okay, but it wasn't what it sounded. They're like, no, I understand. I didn't think that. And then I was like, okay, but did you for a moment? And they were like, well, yeah, the thought crossed my mind, and it was fun. And it was just so fun, and we're talking heavy stuff,
I feel like you gave your client the permission to engage with a awkward situation in their own life with a little levity, and to broach it, and then you could still move forward. You still have a relationship. It's like what plays out in the room is so impactful.
Yeah. So I'm glad you pointed that chapter out too, Rebecca. That's amazing. Okay, I kept you almost an hour. I'm so grateful for your time. This was so fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, the book is amazing. Now I want to go get the Mindfulness Workbook, your previous work. Because the Mindfulness Workbook for Addiction, this one, and I'm gonna post the heck out of this thing, and I'm gonna give one of the books away that you guys sent to. So the Gift Recovery: 52 Mindful Ways to Live Joyfully Beyond Addiction. I would love to, I don't know, down the road, get you on. You both worked at the VA. I'd love to talk maybe PTSD sometime, or some things like that as well. But this has been a blast. So where do people find you? I will have things everywhere, but where will about you?
So we have the mindfulnessworkbook.com, which kind of has our books and a little bit about us. And of course, the books are on Amazon always. And then my website clinically is juliekrafttherapy.com. So you can also find stuff there.
Okay. I'll have links to all of that. So, all right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I look forward to talking to you again in the not too distant future.
Great.
Perfect.
Thanks.